For years, if you were a Bitcoin investor, you had this one super reliable event to look forward to, the halving. But this year, something's different. The playbook that we all thought we knew seems to be changing, which really makes you wonder what's actually driving the Bitcoin market right now. So, the latest halving just happened back in April of 2024. And look, if history was anything to go by, we should be rocketing our way into a massive bull run. One of those huge, sustained price pumps. But as you've probably noticed, the market is, well, kind of quiet. So if the halving isn't the starting pistol anymore, what is? Look, the simple truth is that cycles don't just die, right? They evolve, and it's looking more and more like that old 4-year halving cycle has been overshadowed by something way bigger, something that's tied not to Bitcoin's code, but to the entire global financial system. It's time we started watching the right signal. Okay, so to really get what's happening now, we've got to first look back at the old playbook. For more than a decade, the Bitcoin market basically danced to the beat of this one powerful, pre-programmed event. For what feels like forever, the Bitcoin halving has been gospel. It's pretty simple. Every 4 years, the amount of new Bitcoin being created gets chopped in half. It's this built-in supply shock that, historically, has always kicked off those mind-blowing bull markets because demand just explodes past the new, smaller supply. And hey, for 3 cycles in a row, it worked like a charm. But now, with massive institutions, ETFs, even entire countries jumping in, the whole game has changed. The halving is still really important for making Bitcoin scarce, don't get me wrong, but it's just not the main thing driving the price anymore. There is a much bigger force at play here. And that new signal, it's all about liquidity. And in plain English, that just means the flow of money. When central banks fire up the money printers, all that new cash has to go somewhere. And more, it's fleeing regular currencies for the safety of assets that are actually scarce. And nobody puts this feeling into words better than Michael Saylor. He talks about literally picturing his company's cash, hundreds of millions of dollars, just melting away like ice on a hot day. That's the kind of gut punch feeling that sends people scrambling for a financial safe harbor. So, how do we actually track all this new money being printed? Well, the key thing to watch is the M2 money supply. When central banks want to goose the economy, they print money, making it easier for everyone to borrow and spend. M2 is basically the report card that tracks all this new cash flooding the system. And when you put the M2 chart next to Bitcoin's price, a whole new pattern just jumps out at you. And this is where the new pattern just smacks you in the face. Forget the halving for a second and just look at this. Every single major Bitcoin bull run happened at the exact same time as a huge expansion of the M2 money supply. It's not a supply cycle built into Bitcoin's code anymore. It's a liquidity cycle driven by global money. And if you think that's something, listen to this. Analysts like Larry Lepard are pointing out that even with M2 growing like crazy, the central banks are just warming up. The printers haven't even really been turned on yet. So this liquidity signal, it's flashing brighter than ever. Okay, so if M2 expansion is the fuel, what's the spark that lights the fire? Well, believe it or not, the first clue doesn't come from the crypto world at all. It comes from the oldest hard asset there is, gold. Think about it like this. When the financial system starts to look a little shaky, where does the big conservative money go first? They run to the safest port in the storm, and that has always been gold. It's the first move on the chessboard. But that's just the warm-up act for the main event. So this rotation from gold to Bitcoin follows this really predictable pattern. First, the money printer goes brrr. Second, gold shoots up to a new all-time high, which, by the way, it did earlier this year. Third, gold's rally kind of stalls out and takes a breather. And according to this model, that is exactly where we are right now. So what's the next logical step in this sequence? Bitcoin's main event. So why? Why does the money move from gold to Bitcoin? It all boils down to one simple, powerful word: scarcity. Gold is scarce, sure, but we keep digging more of it out of the ground every year, increasing the supply. But Bitcoin? Bitcoin is absolutely finite. There will only ever be 21 million. That's it. Capital naturally flows from something that's kind of scarce to something that's perfectly scarce. So what kind of an impact are we talking about here? I mean, how big is this rotation, really? Well, consider this one little number, just 2%. That's it. Because the gold market is just so enormous,
if just a tiny, tiny fraction of that money, just 2%, decided to move into the much smaller Bitcoin market, boom, it would have an absolutely explosive effect, potentially sending the price to $165,000 almost overnight. That's the incredible power of this rotation.
All right, let's put all the pieces together. The halving cycle isn't dead, but it's kind of been swallowed up by this much bigger, more powerful cycle that's all about global liquidity and the hunt for true scarcity. So, this is the new playbook. This is the modern Bitcoin cycle. Step 1, the central banks loosen up and M2 expands. Step 2, capital runs for cover, and gold leads the charge. Step 3, Bitcoin wakes up and just completely steals the show. Then, policy tightens, everything cools off, and we wait for the whole thing to start all over again. So look, the next time you hear people talking about central banks or you see that M2 supply chart starting to tick up, you'll know that's not just some boring economic news. In this new world, that's the signal. The old question was all about the halving. The new one is all about liquidity. Which leaves you with one last question. Are you watching the right one?